So a little over a day ago, I asked you guys to make your best educated guess as to what Trump will say in his State of the Union address. And to be honest, I'm quite impressed at how accurate some of you guys got. And that's the exact result I want to see out of this channel. That this channel is not just here to give you all the answers or tell you what's wrong or right, but to help promote you to think for yourself and to critically examine everything and to avoid falling for the propaganda. And once again, I think you guys did a pretty good job. So I took 5 examples that I liked the most, and let's start with the least accurate. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have a President Camacho speech resembling something out of the movie Idiocracy, although it might as well been in a different terms, but there definitely wasn't a belt-fed machine gun pulled out and fired into the air to attain the attention of the crowd. And yes, unfortunately, there was no electrolyte bomb dropped in there as well. But this was one of my favorite comments, so I had to give a shout out to Sluggo for that one. Now, the next one was a little bit more accurate and on point. We had Redivar saying, quote, "I made lots of jobs. I brought coal mining back to life. I took care of North Korea. I will protect our allies, but they have to pay. I pressure Iran more and stand with Israel. Some more ass kicking for Israel and the Jews. Brag about his family, including Kushner, how much he kept America safe." And shitting on Hillary a bit, and don't forget about his huge success to make America great so far, and more greatness coming to America. Now, Redivar, I think Hillary a bit, and damn close, but not as close as some of these other guys. He'll talk about building up the military, how great and amazing the military is. He'll say some BS about how wonderful the economy is doing, and he'll talk about uniting all Americans. A bunch of useless platitudes, small talk, and rhetoric, same as every State of the Union in the past. And that is very correct, and once again spot on, and a tighter definition of exactly of what was said. But I think someone did it a little better and a little more straight to the point. Everything is great, great, great. North Korea, Iran, not so great. And Bruce, you were spot on. It couldn't have been made any simpler, I don't think. And again, this was a great prediction because this is exactly what he did. But I have to hold the highest esteem to the person that in detail was able to guess just about everything that he talked about, at least the key details or the ones that are propaganda filled. And that goes to Roy Lennon. Now, number 2 is not highlighted, but I should have highlighted that one because after second thought, number 2 was correct as well. And number 4 is really up to the debate because he didn't necessarily go after the mainstream media, but what he entails here in his 7 lists are just about exactly what he did. And I appreciate Roy's time in putting the effort into this comment, and I'm going to read some of these as well. Number 1, he will rant about all the jobs he created and about how he is making America great again. Yes, he will, and yes, he did. He will try to take credit for defeating ISIS in Syria and say that they are all on the run. Now, this is exactly what I thought he was going to talk about, and that's exactly what he did talk about. And the first thing I thought about when I heard it in the speech was his comment here. Now, skipping over 4, we'll go to 5. He will rant about how Democrats have been obstructing progress in American legislation and will hint at the corruption in government institutions without being specific as a veiled threat he can hold over them. He will go on and on and on about the stock market rallies and give figures about black unemployment, which he did. He made specific note about black unemployment and Hispanic unemployment, so that was a good catch there, Roy. Has been at its lowest to compare himself to the Obama administration. Exactly what he did. Number 6, he will talk about how he has saved the U.S. military from falling into despair and how he has created programs to support vets. Another spot on guess there, and he did exactly that in his speech. Number 7, finally his wall. His great big stupid wall will stop all the crime coming into America, and Iran nuclear capabilities will be thwarted along with rocket mans. Now, other than using the very term rocket mans, he did exactly that. Talked about the wall, and he went after Iran, no doubt. I think that's something all of us were expecting. Conclusion, nobody will go to jail for corruption. A few may lose their jobs, but he won't truly punish criminals in the government because they are more useful to blackmail in Washington than being stuck in a jail cell. Nothing will change except for more money for walls and wars. Exactly. That's a great summary, Roy, and I appreciate that comment. And you were spot on with this guess. Definitely right on the point. Now that we've gone over that, we're actually going to dive into breaking down some of the speech. I've actually cut parts that have the important key parts that I think I need to tear down as far as propaganda goes, and we're going to hop right into that.
We saw strangers shielding strangers from a hail of gunfire on the Las Vegas Strip.
So first thing to note is that he's hopping right into false flags and politicizing them as every past president has done, and ironically trying to unify everybody under one roof with death and tragedy. Now, I would recommend you to my breakdown of the Las Vegas shootings, but YouTube has censored the hell out of them. So if you're able to find them on my YouTube channel, have at it. You don't have to dig through my videos. But other than that, you can go down to the links in the description and go to my Steemit, where I have re-uploaded the videos to DTube, and you can check that out.
Some trials over the past year touched this chamber very personally. With us tonight is one of the toughest people ever to serve in this House. A guy who took a bullet, almost died, and was back to work 3.5 months later. The legend from Louisiana, Congressman Steve Scalise.
So once again, we have them jumping on a likely false flag to promote unification.
In the aftermath of that terrible shooting, we came together, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as representatives of the people.
And again, Trump just makes my point.
But it is not enough to come together only in times of tragedy. Tonight, I call upon all of us to set aside our differences, to seek out common ground, and to summon the unity we need to deliver for the people. This is really the key. These are the people we were elected to serve.
And hold up 1 second, Trump. The people that were elected to serve, or that were put into office via the most money, via the most lobbying, via the most ass-kissing of Israel, is that what the people really put into office? I believe not.
And just a little while ago, ExxonMobil announced a $50 billion investment in the United States. Just a little while ago.
So obviously Trump has to give a shout out for his oil buddies that propagate the Middle Eastern wars and work alongside the Zionists that keep propagating death and destruction for all of its occupants. Not a shock, just thought I might mention.
And we celebrate our police, our military, and our amazing veterans as heroes who deserve our total and unwavering support.
And again, Trump is there to promote the military-industrial complex and the police state, which are both gross misconducts under the Constitution and are definitely illegal and should not exist.
Here tonight is Preston Sharp, a 12-year-old boy from Redding, California, who noticed that veterans' graves were not marked with flags on Veterans Day. He decided all by himself to change that and started a movement that has now placed 40,000 flags at the graves of our great heroes. Preston, a job well done. 40,000 flags. Young patriots like Preston teach all of us about our civic duty as Americans. And I met Preston a little while ago, and he is something very special that I can tell you. Great future. Thank you very much for all you've done.
So once again here, we have a typical politician abusing children that don't know any better, that don't understand the laws, and using their naiveness to promote illegal, unconstitutional actions such as the police state and military-industrial complex, and illegal foreign wars on sovereign nations, including sovereign UN nations that are very truthfully being illegally occupied by the United States. So we just have to understand and recognize when that kind of thing is happening.
Preston's reverence for those who have served our nation reminds us of why we salute our flag, why we put our hands on our hearts for the Pledge of Allegiance, and why we proudly stand for the national anthem.
Of course, the promotion of those two illegal entities are going to get a standing ovation.
Americans love their country, and they deserve a government that shows them the same love and loyalty in return.
Amen, Trump. Amen. But unfortunately, you are unconstitutional, and the rest of that part of his speech, he goes on talking about how he's assigning people to uphold the Constitution, which I find very, very ironic, considering that he's promoting unconstitutional acts right before he says that.
In 2016, we lost 64,000 Americans to drug overdoses, 174 deaths per day, 7 per hour. We must get much tougher on drug dealers and pushers if we are going to succeed in stopping this scourge.
Okay, well, if you're going to do that, Trump, although I don't think it's up to the government to what people put in their own bodies, that's something as a libertarian you're supposed to follow. You allow people to do what they want as long as it's not harming anyone. But nevertheless, that's not how it is in the United States right now. So if you're going to do that, at least go after the main cause. So the main cause of those drug overdoses in 2016, citing the same data that you cited, was fentanyl, which is a prescription opioid that they have to go to the doctor to receive. It was 25% more deadly than street drugs. And that is on a sharp upturn in 2016, as you said, but you didn't specify that it was from the government-instituted Big Pharma. So if you're going to do that, go after that. I wonder if he will.
One of my greatest priorities is to reduce the price of prescription drugs.
Nope. I guess not. I guess that's not his goal. His goal is one of his number one priorities is to reduce the price of prescription drugs such as the fentanyl opioids. So it's all right if they overdose as long as it's coming from the government and the government's getting that money. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, Trump. Thank you for clarifying that.
And prices will come down substantially. Watch.
Oh, I trust you, Trump, because you are nothing but a puppet to promote Big Pharma and all these government industries that are cancers to our society. So I have no doubt that the prices of those types of drugs will come down as you crack down on drug dealers and those bad guys that aren't harming anyone but themselves.
As we rebuild America's strength and confidence at home, we are also restoring our strength and standing abroad. Around the world, we face rogue regimes, terrorist groups, and rivals like China and Russia that challenge our interests, our economy, and our values.
What has China or Russia done to encroach on our values? Or even come close to getting the term rogue regime? Even though I know it's up to interpretation to say if you meant it towards those countries or not, used it in the same sentence. So for those that are uninformed, they will use that together and they will associate China and Russia with rogue regime. How many countries have those two countries invaded since World War II? Go look that up. And then also go look up how many countries that the United States has invaded. You will be shocked to see the one who is the real encroacher in that situation. Also, look up how many military bases are surrounding those countries that are not from those countries, but are from the United States. You have to start thinking about these things.
In confronting these horrible dangers, we know that weakness is the surest path to conflict, and unmatched power is the surest means to our true and great defense.
Which is trying to justify why our military spending is 7 times larger than that of, say, Russia or China. Always having to have this justification that you have to have the biggest, baddest, scariest military to maintain peace.
For this reason, I am asking Congress to end the dangerous defense sequester and fully fund our great military.
Of course, you have General Mattis there, the pro-Saudi Arabian, the pro-terrorist, standing up taking massive applause for increasing our military spending, as we already know is way overfunded as it is now.
Last year, I also pledged that we would work with our allies to extinguish ISIS from the face of the earth. 1 year later, I am proud to report that the coalition to defeat ISIS has liberated very close to 100% of the territory just recently held by these killers in Iraq and in Syria and in other locations as well.
And if you've been following our channel, you would have known that the US government had done nothing but to promote ISIS even after Trump was elected, bombing several locations where Syrian and Russian and Iranian forces were fighting and pushing back ISIS to only promote them and allow them to grab more land. And for Trump to claim he successfully defeated ISIS is a joke, because it's a proxy army that was there to promote the Zionist agenda of the Greater Israel Project. And the only land that they have taken from ISIS is now replaced with another proxy army, which is the Kurds, under the flag of the YPG, which is a mix of Kurds and other lesser known fighters, and is just another land grab, holding land in Iraq and Syria. So for you to say you defeated ISIS is a joke, when the Syrian Arab Army, Russia, Iran, China, and even Egypt did 100% more to defeat your creation ISIS. So don't even stand there and try to take justification, just like Obama did with Osama bin Laden, when Osama bin Laden was an asset of the CIA who was living right next door to a military base when they found him, quote unquote, which we still don't have evidence that he was ever killed anyway, because he was given a sea burial where he was tossed into the ocean, according to the official statement. So don't come at me with this kind of bull. We don't fall for that shit anymore. Alright, moving on. Yeah, I gotta have to have all those applause for that. I love how he claps for himself.
But there is much more work to be done. We will continue our fight until ISIS is defeated.
AKA, we left 2% of that 98% we supposedly knocked out just for justification to continue to fund illegal proxy wars in other countries, such as they did in Iraq and other countries prior in the past.
Last month, I also took an action endorsed unanimously by the U.S. Senate just months before. I recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Yeah, and of course, Kushner, the Zionist boyfriend of his daughter, is going to be the one that they shoot the camera right to, because he's the one that is buying illegal under UN sanction settlements inside Palestinian territory delegated in 1947, which the Israelis have never abided by. Yet nobody is brave enough to enforce it, because they don't want to see the military-industrial complex of the United States, which is controlled by a leash by Israel, that has full tame over that. Wherever Israel points, that's where we go, because we are 100%, 1000% quoting Trump for Israel, a fully illegal apartheid state.
Shortly afterwards, dozens of countries voted in the United Nations General Assembly against America's sovereign right to...
They didn't vote against America's sovereign right. They voted against breaking UN law. How can you not understand that? Well, he does understand that. But of course they don't want you to know that. And all of those countries were voting against illegal action and illegal occupation, which, if you go and look at the occupation of the Palestinians, is one of the greatest crimes in human history, especially in modern times.
Make this decision. In 2016, American taxpayers generously sent those same countries more than $20 billion in aid. That is why tonight I am asking Congress to pass legislation to help ensure American foreign assistance dollars always serve American interests and only go to friends of America, not enemies of America.
So what he's saying is that the only way to get U.S. funding, which is fine if the people decide where the funding goes, but the only way to get U.S. funding is if you support Israel or you make a pledge to Israel. That is just like the pledge for the hurricane victims here in Texas after Hurricane Harvey came through, and there was several little towns that in their document you were required to sign to receive funds and aid. You had to make a pledge to Israel. I have a video on my channel about that. You can go check that out or check the link in the description below.
As we strengthen friendships all around the world, we are also restoring clarity about our adversaries. When the people of Iran rose up against the crimes of their corrupt dictatorship,
this is something else we talked about. This is a CIA-funded, Mossad-funded protest that is similar to that in Syria, that in Egypt, that in Libya, that in Iraq. These false color revolutions that are funded by our governments, that are coups that have been admitted over and over in the past, but we suddenly forget about it, and then, oh no, this is a true revolution. The people truly want to take down their evil dictatorship, which in reality is a government that's for their people and don't want to give in to U.S. pressure and to be indebted by the Federal Reserve, especially the International Monetary Fund.
I did not stay silent. America stands with the people of Iran in their courageous struggle for freedom.
And if you truly stayed with the people of Iran, the vast majority actually came and protested against these protests that were largely fueled by outside foreign intervention that can be proven now.
I am asking Congress to address the fundamental flaws in the terrible Iran nuclear deal. My administration has...
Just to clarify, the reason why the terrible Iran nuclear deal is terrible in the eyes of Trump and his Zionist puppets is because the Iran nuclear deal has a defense pact in it that makes sure that if anyone attacks Iran, including their favorite state of all time, Israel, attacks them, they have to defend Iran. That's why the nuclear deal is so bad in the eyes of Trump. Not saying that I'm happily for Obama's regulations, but that is the reason why he wants to repeal that. And as soon as they do repeal that, that's when they go after regime change, just like they tried in Syria, just like they were successful in Libya and Iraq, so on and so forth.
Has also imposed tough sanctions on the communist and socialist dictatorships in Cuba and Venezuela.
Sanctions don't hurt the governments, they only hurt the people. They make them starve, they make them financially dependent on that government, and then it crashes the whole system within itself. So the only ones that suffer are going to be the people up until the very last day. It's essentially like chokeholding the people until they finally do what they want and force the government out. They could be 100% for that said government, but if they starve to death, eventually they're going to start saying, hey, you know what? We don't want to die. So we have no other option than to revolt against the government and then establish a puppet just so we can stay alive and feed ourselves. That's the only idea behind sanctions 99% of the time.
But no regime has oppressed its own citizens more totally or brutally than the cruel dictatorship in North Korea.
So we actually did a video on this, and it was entitled Trump Proposes a Preemptive Strike on North Korea, which is preemptively, like Bush's preemptively, based on evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq to attack and knock out and take down Saddam. But you know what happened there? There was no weapons of mass destruction. And now we're turned toward North Korea, where they say, oh, they got ballistic missiles. Even if they do have nukes, they are just for defense to prevent the same things that happen in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, so on and so forth. So they don't have to live under the International Monetary Fund and become a vassal state.
North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear missiles could very soon threaten our homeland. We are waging a campaign of maximum pressure to prevent that from ever happening.
I.e. starving the people out like they have for over 50 years with sanctions. That's why these people are starving in some of the pictures where they say atrocities by the government.
Past experience has taught us that complacency and concessions only invite aggression and provocation. I will not repeat the mistakes of past administrations that got us into this very dangerous position.
But you will repeat the past mistakes of the administrations before you, because you are continuing the sanctions, continuing the starvation of the people in North Korea, and continuing to just create this self-prophecy just so you can overthrow this government to institute your own puppet, likely at the hands of the Zionists.
We need only look at the depraved character of the North Korean regime to understand the nature of the nuclear threat it could pose to America and to our allies. As part of our defense, we must modernize and rebuild our nuclear arsenal, hopefully never having to use it, but making it so strong and so powerful that it will deter any acts of aggression by any other nation or anyone else.
So basically you're saying we need to do the thing that they can't do because you can trust us. You can trust the country that is the only country in the world that has ever officially dropped nukes on another country. You can trust us, but not this other country that might have a handful of nukes that could be easily shot down by our defense missiles or those Thiad missile systems the Koreans didn't want in South Korea, and they're right next door. They didn't want those missile defense systems in their country, but they're there and you could still shoot them down if it so happened they were crazy enough to launch nuclear missiles in a preemptive attack, which I can guarantee you will almost certainly not happen. And if they try to say it does happen, it is almost certainly a false flag. Because if they launch a missile, it's not going to leave their airspace if they don't want it to. That's the truth. You could... Even the military generals right there know that's some bullshit right there. Just look at their grimacing faces. Not a one of them even have a slight smile or appreciation for what he just said. They know, and we've had it before, even with Hillary. They were saying, we don't want a global conflict with these no-fly zones and things like that. It's the same premise. Even though they're at the restraint of these Zionist cancers, at least some of them have common sense to know that that's not a good idea. You think China's just going to step aside? No, they've already said that if you attack preemptively, we will attack. We will defend them. Hello?
Perhaps someday in the future there will be a magical moment when the countries of the world will get together to eliminate their nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, sadly.
And the principle behind what he says is the same thing. We have to keep these weapons because we have to defend each other without mutual cooperation. The only way that North Korea can guarantee its future is nuclear weapons or some type of weapon of mass destruction to prevent you from coming in and committing suicide. That's the only defense they have against tyrannical governments such as yourself. Thank you for proving my points over and over again with your own ironic, idiotic statements that contradict each other.
On his way to study abroad in Asia, Otto joined a tour to North Korea. At its conclusion, this wonderful young man was arrested and charged with crimes against the state. After a shameful trial, the dictatorship sentenced Otto. So
you're saying after a shameful trial, which is very objective, which we know the United States has a past history of having undercover agents in other states. I'm not saying that this is the case, but I'm saying that they have in the past had undercover agents in countries to help overthrow those said sovereign nations. And they had a trial. Unlike certain facilities such as Guantanamo Bay, which at least they're shutting down. I mean, God forbid they keep that program going, right?
To 15 years of hard labor before returning him to America last June, horribly injured and on the verge of death. He passed away just days after his return. Otto's wonderful.
Not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but what if the government said, you know, we're trying to push this agenda that North Korea is this crazy dictatorship, which they have been proven false in their statements in the past, such as saying such and such was assassinated, this person was killed, this person, this aunt, this leader, and we keep seeing over and over again in Korean media that these people keep showing up well after they were pronounced dead in Western media, which, unless they're zombies, means that they're not actually murderously killing all these people that they're saying they are. So what's to say that the US government didn't possibly kill this person themselves just to have the benefit of saying, oh, look how horrible he was treated, this or that? We don't know the facts because we can't trust a government that does nothing but lie 24/7.
Parents, Fred and Cindy Warmbier, are here with us tonight, along with Otto's brother and sister, Austin and Greta. Please.
Let's keep in mind this isn't the first emotional set of family that he has brought in here. He's brought in several families in this speech to try to invoke an emotional response so you don't think about the actions that are happening because it makes you emotional. That's what they try to do. Don't think with your head, think with your tears, think with your heart. But in reality, these drastic measures that the United States goes to only leads to more and more and more and more death. So the death of one individual does not justify the death of millions of others.
And when captured overseas, they should be treated like the terrorists they are. In the past, we have foolishly released hundreds and hundreds of dangerous terrorists, only to meet them again on the battlefield.
Yeah. Release overseas is what he said. Overseas. So these illegal foreign wars that we have ourselves in, completely unconstitutional and against UN regulation, are capturing people and holding them without a trial. That's what he's talking about.
Including the ISIS leader, al-Baghdadi.
Which indications show that al-Baghdadi, such as Osama bin Laden before him, were trained to perpetuate these proxy armies to overthrow the sovereign nations that the United States or Israel does not want to continue. So it goes to show why they might have released him.
Who we captured, who we had, who we released. So today I'm keeping another promise. I just signed, prior to walking in, an order directing Secretary Mattis, who is doing a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, pro-Zionist, pro-Saudi Arabian Wahhabist Mattis is doing a great job fulfilling the puppet deeds that he is supposed to do. Good job, Mattis.
To re-examine our military detention policy and to keep open the detention facilities in Guantanamo Bay. I am asking...
Yeah. We got a woohoo practically in the back of the crowd. They were really excited about that one. Yeah, this couldn't be more of a hypocritical statement. Are you kidding me? How can you sit there and say, on one hand, oh, these depraved regimes that are holding unfair trials, when at the very same time, we illegally detain people from other countries, bring them over here to Guantanamo Bay, a lawless island, and then hold them for the entirety of their life in some cases, including children as young as 16, without even a trial, even if it was an unjust trial, no trial whatsoever. So even North Korea's possibly biased trial, as you're trying to portray, is a better trial than what the people at Guantanamo Bay get. So it is a completely hypocritical statement for you there to criticize them for what happened with Otto, and then they jump on saying, oh, we're reinstituting Guantanamo Bay and the principles to illegally hold people without any crimes or justification or any trial. That's what you're saying. Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Donald Trump.
Congress to ensure that in the fight against ISIS and al-Qaeda, we continue to have all necessary power to detain terrorists wherever we chase them down, wherever we find them. And in many cases, for them, it will now be Guantanamo Bay. We are joined by one more witness to the ominous nature of this regime. His name is Mr. Ji Sung-ho.
Ooh, saving the best for last, huh, Trump? You gotta save dessert for last.
In 1996, Sung-ho was a starving boy in North Korea. One day he tried to steal coal from a railroad car to buy.
Let me just reinstitute the reason why he might have been a starving boy was because of the illegal sanctions that we have on North Korea.
Order for a few scraps of food, which were very hard to get. In the process, he passed out on the train tracks, exhausted from hunger. He woke up as a train ran over his limbs. He then endured multiple amputations without anything to dull the pain or the hurt. His brother and sister gave...
Okay, let's just examine that for 1 second. First of all, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but for someone just to pass out on railroad tracks, that's a pretty rare occurrence there.
Gave what little food they had to help him recover and ate dirt themselves, permanently stunting their own growth.
Ate dirt. Ate dirt. I'm not even going to comment on that.
Later, he was tortured by North Korean authorities after returning from a brief visit to China. His tormentors wanted to know if he'd met any Christians. He had, and he resolved after that to be free.
So it was after he met the Christians that he decided that he wants to be free. So what they're trying to do is to pull in that emotional response again, and they're trying to grab at the Christian evangelical minorities to try to pull in their support once again for Trump, because he knows that is his strongest supporters, because a lot of evangelical Christians have been brainwashed into thinking that the Zionist and anything pro-Israel and anything of that nature is of the will of God. So anything that Trump, which is 100% pro-Israel, and he's bringing Jerusalem back to the Israelites under the eyes of these evangelical Christians, think that, oh, it must be for the right reasons to prevent the destruction of Israel. I know that as a first-hand fact, and that is not even true under the Bible itself. You can go look that up, countless of videos by other channels. That's not my forte, but go look into it if you're an evangelical Christian. Being pro-Trump or pro-Zionist is not biblical or the will of God according to the Bible. Don't take my word for it.
Sung-ho traveled thousands of miles on crutches all across China and Southeast Asia to freedom. Most of his family followed. His father was caught trying to escape and was tortured to death.
So how does Sung-ho, who is crawling around thousands of miles, as you stated there, on crutches, not caught, but his father, who presumably isn't in the same situation as Sung-ho, caught? I don't know, that's weird. But nevertheless, let's continue.
Today he lives in Seoul, where he rescues other defectors and broadcasts into North Korea what the regime fears most, the truth. Today he has a new leg, but Sung-ho, I understand you still keep those old crutches as a reminder of how far you've come. Your great sacrifice is an inspiration to us all. Please, thank you.
Just like babies in the incubators, just like gas children in Syria, they have to have a symbol of the revolution, a symbol of the regime change. And their symbol this time looks like it's gonna be Sung-ho, holding up his crutches in defiance of the corrupt North Korean dictatorship that not only wants to make their people suffer, but they also want to make the rest of the world suffer because they're crazy and they want to nuke everyone that isn't feeding the North Korean government. That is the picture that they're painting. That is the truth. And that is what the North Koreans are afraid of. That is the truth. The truth that the United States is willing to overthrow anybody that it does not see fit, regardless if it's legal or not. They'll do it, and they will undermine any laws to get what they want.
Sung-ho's story is a testament to the yearning of every human soul to live in freedom. It was that same yearning for freedom that nearly 250 years ago gave birth to a special place called America. It was a small cluster of colonies caught between a great ocean and a vast wilderness. It was home to an incredible people with a revolutionary idea that they could rule themselves, that they could chart their own destiny, and that together they could light up the entire world.
And thank you, Trump, for reiterating my points exactly. We need to govern ourselves and not listen to these tyrannical parasites that don't follow our doctrine, that don't follow any semblance of law, because at our heart, at the heart of what this country supposedly stands for, is freedom and the free choice of the people, not its government. All the government is a representation of the will of the people, and if it's not, then there are amendments, I don't have to point to them exactly because you know which ones they are, that are there set to correct the problem. Start using your freedoms and start standing up against it when tyrannical governments are against those freedoms. They tear those freedoms down. It doesn't matter which face it is. It doesn't matter if it's Clinton, Bush, Obama, or Trump. It's all the same. It's the same game. It's the left-right paradigm. It will continue to happen until we make a stand and we actually change it for what it actually stands for and to promote the actual will of the people. Now that's going to be all for now, guys. I know it got a little bit heated and this is a really long video, but it needed to happen to expose all the corruptness in this speech, because I know a lot of people that sent me texts, people that I know when I tell about this stuff, wow, Trump gave a really great speech, and they fundamentally miss all these different parts where they explain in broad daylight that they are abusing the power that we supposedly gave to them, even though it's more like stolen from us. They abuse it. So give this video to people that are struggling and think that Trump is really for us, or think that any of these presidents are really for us. Let them know what they're breaking. Let them know the truth. If you appreciate what we do here, you can support us via the links below through our Patreon, PayPal, Bitcoin, Litecoin. Continue to keep your eyes open. And as always, this has been Tyranny Unmasked.